All right, welcome back for the episode of Carnivore Trade. Today is Wednesday, May 24th, 2023. If you're not done so already, please give the video a thumbs up, like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Come find me on carnivoretrades.com for swing trading alerts and analysis. Anyways, let's get into it here today. So, interesting news day today. So, again, debt ceiling kind of at the forefront of the market here. We had a pretty good gap down, and spiders down about 0.75%, and triple Qs were down 0.5%. Obviously, the big headline now will be NVDA. So let's just get that out of the way here. So NVDA, huge move after earnings. We had a little gap down here, but this is why you never really want to speculate too much as to what goes into earnings here, because it's always a crapshoot. We came off the lows here, and we actually had a pretty decent pop towards the end. Maybe somebody knew something. Definitely, I would assume at least, the very least, some hedging going on there. And you saw the same thing kind of in AMD and a few other names getting a bid towards the middle of the afternoon. If we watch the semiconductors, pretty good gap down, and then still inside of this rising wedge. 135 handle is basically where we're sitting right now, and that is, right at that top side of that trend line. So that's still acting as resistance even in the after hours. When we take a look at NVIDIA, new all-time high there. I think it just got up to 370 in the after hours. Let's take a look at the after hours print there. Yeah, big move all the way up to 370 exactly. So right to the penny there, huge move. What can you say here? So new all-time high in the after hours for NVIDIA. I have not read the report yet. Just came out a few minutes ago, and just as I'm doing this video here. So I'm not sure what they said. I'm sure AI came up a lot of times there. You're seeing AMD get a sympathy bid as well. Take a look at AMD up to 116. So a big move there. And that's still, that's a pretty big level of resistance there. We'll see how that opens up tomorrow. There is a gap at right here. I'm trying to zoom in on it. There we go. Right at 119.22. I don't think we quite got there. So 116. That's still a gap window though with this red bar. So still lots of resistance there in that area there for AMD. But NVIDIA, just what a moonshot move. I mean, this is up. You got to go. So 110. To 3 set. This is up. Well over 200% now since the October lows. You'd think that this was a blow off move. Maybe it is. But geez, what an incredible run for NVIDIA. And we'll see how this affects the market tomorrow. I'll be very interested to see where it opens and how this trades here. I would imagine shorts have definitely been squeezed out of it. Look at the volume in the after hours starting to pick up there on NVDA. But big move. Let's get over to the spiders, though, because we want to talk about that today. So right now, spiders, and they're getting up a little bit here in the after hours. Spiders up, basically like $1 or $2. Pretty much takes you to the highs of that last kind of little pop that we had towards 3 o'clock. Remember, NVIDIA obviously makes up way bigger of a weighting in the triple Qs, and the triple Qs are a little bit higher. Obviously, big level, though, that I'm watching here, and I talked about this earlier in the short video today, is 410.23. So that's going to be this low from last week. If you get a weekly close below that level, that opens the door for downside to, I would say, at least to 400 here. And again, you got the 200 moving average in this area, this upsloping trend line going back to October, as well as that broadening channel. So we'll watch to see how that does going into tomorrow. Obviously, NVIDIA earnings, can affect that, but the spiders are a little bit different here than tech. Either way, tomorrow for the bulls, you probably obviously you want to see a V shape in any shape or form that you can get it in. For the bears, I think you just want consolidation. So even just a doji, something kind of like a pause day would be fine. You don't want a repeat of earlier this month where we kind of topped out at the top end of this broadening channel, and then we got oversold really quickly. I mean, we're down 100 points here in really 4 days, on the SPY. So you don't want to get too oversold here and then, open the door for a squeeze. That's kind of the bear case right now. So the bear case is you want consolidation is basically what I'm saying. And then maybe you could continue down Friday. But either way right now, obviously it's very kind of news driven here with the debt ceiling. But right now we're holding that 410 area. If we look on kind of like an hourly time frame, you can see this is where we consolidated for a while and we came down. Now we're testing, and of course there's the after hours pop there off of NVIDIA. But if we look at the normal style here, you can see we kind of closed with a bit of a bear flag there. And again, we'll depend on where we open tomorrow, but either way, right into that area of support. So you want to see, for bears, you want to see a little consolidation here. Let those moving averages kind of catch up. Let the RSI, the oscillators and stuff like that kind of reset. But for bulls, you just want to see that V shape. So that's kind of what we're going to look for here. As far as the triple Qs are concerned, again, we put our trend lines back on here. So again, we have this upsloping trend line and this other upsloping trend line with the 20 MA kind of coming into a convergence here. So if we were to get down in this area, that would likely be support here in the short term. It kind of throws everything off here with the NVDA earnings, because now we're basically back to, we're 335 essentially, 335 and change. So really, if we look on an intraday, we're basically right near that breakdown area. So there's your low from the morning yesterday, and then that's where we broke down. So basically that's where we're stalling out here in the after hours. Look at the NQ if we want. Yeah, NQ big bid there. So and there's that pivot from yesterday. So that's where we're stalling out right now. So it's a little bit tricky because we don't know where we're going to open here. I've seen earnings reports where you have a big move and then it kind of comes back in after the conference call, or it's always kind of different here when you get that big kind of an after hours move here. But either way, that's where the Qs are right now. If you kind of chop around and go sideways, it can go through that though. I would say at this point, because we've bounced so much, if we open up here and we fade, it's going to be harder for this to hold, especially if we fade over a couple of days, because we've gotten so close to it. But those are your levels there. And then obviously the high here, 338.67 on the triple Qs. And there's pretty good resistance around 340 as well. But either way, nice pop there for the Qs. And the after hours. Oh, another thing I want to talk about on the SPY, the QQQ here. If we look on the weekly, we're kind of just right into that 100 MA. The SPY, though, is currently below that. So right now you have a move up. And I talked about this yesterday morning. We have a kind of an outside move. And now it's kind of coming back in off that 100 MA. And I said yesterday, look, we coiled for 7 weeks just to pop for 2 days and then roll right over. Not really a good look for bulls. You kind of want to, you should have momentum to push higher after this much consolidation. So that was kind of the red flag. And, despite NVIDIA earnings here, something's likely the market's going to trade down, I would say, into the middle of June. That's just the way I see it right now. But again, NVIDIA to the rescue here. So we'll see how that plays out into tomorrow. And we can take a look at that before we'll close out here. But yeah, it looks like we're settling around that 360 area for now. We'll see how that does here. All right, let's get over to the Dow. So the diamond here basically stopping right at that 200 moving average there, and it closed essentially at the lows of the day. If we consolidate here sideways, this can move down into this area here. You've got a lot of pivots that we broke out from right around 323, 324, and then that's your kind of last little reversal pivot. So that would be an area on the downside, but definitely doing a little bit of technical damage, getting back below that POC at 331.45. You kind of got to get back above these moving averages to kind of negate some of that. And, with the Dow here, you got 1, 2, 3, 4 lower highs now. So just be aware of that. And now lower lows there on the daily. So Dow in a little bit weaker shape. Russell still in weak shape here. I just don't see anything good here. I was really hoping for more of a pop yesterday to get really kind of closer to that upside trend line, but it hit the 100 and 200 and backed off of there. Pretty good shooting star. A little follow through here today. Found a little support around the 50 and 20 moving average. And, you kind of, again, if we look at the hourly again, kind of a lot of pivots in this area. But, if this consolidates, it can go lower. And as you guys know, I say it pretty much every day. But this is just a really ugly weekly pattern. And, it's really the same thing on the monthly. So just be aware of that. But Russell down. And it's holding those moving averages for now here. All right, over to, so we mentioned the semis obviously already. That's backing off a little bit here, but still at that 134 area. Still inside of this rising wedge, so I'm very interested to see how that trades out tomorrow. And if it does make a new nominal high, because you can still technically make nominal highs now. If we back out a little bit, you can see you can make a nominal high and still be in this wedge. We're just tightening. But either way, big move there for the SMH in the after hours, and that really is obviously lifting tech and lifting the market after a pretty good down day. IGV down 0.5%. That did close back below 310. So again, a little bit of a weak signal there. You kind of want to see this after a breakout. You want to see it hold as support, and we never really did that. So again, we'll look at 305. If you're back below 305, and probably needs to retest 300 and then possibly 295. So those are your levels there. If it shapes up, again, obviously we still are looking for that same level, again, that POC around 322. 100-week moving average, and pretty good pivot point here for the market, or for IGV rather, that we'd be coming into on the upside. Dow transports continue to be weak, so down 1.5% here. And again, let's take a look. So we first hit this trend line, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times now in December, and then 3 months into March 24th, right? Late December, it's 3 months. March 24th to April 26th, it's 1 month. April 26th to 5/16, that's 3 weeks. Now we've got 1 week with lower highs. That tells you that momentum is declining. And if we get a close below that trend line, that triggers a head and shoulder there on the weekly of the Dow transport. So just be aware of that. They're still lagging. And again, tech very divergent from the real economy, and well, I should say the real economy, but from the rest of the market for the most part. And again, today, perfect example of that with NVDA, Meta, AMD, those types of names, still really kind of holding the market up here. But, the breadth, the transports, you guys know Dow theory, still showing a lot of weakness here. But either way, that's, it's a market cap game, and that's what keeps the indices up right now. But transport's still weak. Anyways, let's get over to the 2-year. So ZT here, that was down a little bit today as well. I've marked this here, so that green bar right there on the weekly, that's your green bar low. That I would think gets defended here. If we get a close below that, that's a big negative, because that means yields are going to go higher, which I think they're ultimately going to do anyway. But right now, they can still hold up here. They're a little oversold. I mean, take a look at this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 days in a row the 2-year has fallen. So definitely a little bit oversold, maybe due for a bounce here. Ultimately, yields will go higher, but they're hanging in there for now and probably due for a bounce again. Same thing with the 10-year. We kind of went up into this red bar. We talked about that yesterday. I said it needs to consolidate, and so far, that's what it's doing, right? You got 1, 2, 3, and you're just kind of going sideways. If this goes sideways more, it's going to go through that. TYX, 30 years, same thing. You consolidate sideways, you're going to go through all these pivots. So little, short-term overbought here, but if this does some backing and filling, there's no reason. And by the way, you've got higher lows here too. So again, just be aware of that. So rates still holding up pretty well. I know the Fed funds futures are pricing in cuts in the 2-year, or cuts in rates, but the 2-year is saying no. So interesting dynamic there. Either way, I still think it's higher for longer. Anyways, let's get over to home builders here. XHB, that had some follow through to the downside. Did come a little bit off the lows, but down 1/3%. And again, follow through below that 20 MA. So we've definitely confirmed below that 20 MA now. Again, I think the big level here, you might get a bounce in the short term. There's kind of a pivot right there. I think the bigger level here in the near term is around 68. So we'll watch that. Moving forward, ITB actually managed to scratch out a little bit of a gain. Again, there's your pivot high, and it held up right there. If you get through that, though, it's still probably 71.50 to 72 are bigger levels there for ITB. And VNQ finally breaking down here. So again, we talked about this for like 6 weeks, right? Like, technically it's a green bar, and then you're inside of that, but look how weak. Trend is down, nothing really good here, and it's finally starting to roll over. It looks like we just filled that gap there. So 78.51, and we closed at 78.41. So the gap is filled. I would think that if we get down there in the next couple of days, we probably get a bounce at this level. There's a lot of demand right here in this pivot, but you take that out. Really, all you have is this one right here, and then if we go back on a weekly, there's this big gap down here, but we've already hit it. Basically, kind of gotten close once. Now with lower highs again, it's going to be harder for this to hold. So I don't like this chart here, really any way you look at it. But VNQ down 2.15, and then XLF also down pretty sharply. Again, down 1.3. Again, it's the big tech show. Again, like we've been saying, right? Like I've said every day. Like we talked about the transports here, not very good. Financials, not very good. Take a look at XLV. I don't talk about XLV a lot. But XLV down, almost 0.75% here today. Definitely on the weaker side, but financials down, VNQ down, even housing down a little bit today, XHB, but NVDA with the save, right? So anyways, XLF backing off, losing the moving averages, back below the 200-week moving average. So not a good chart here to me. This is more of a bear wedge. It's hanging in there for now, but I think it's kind of on borrowed time if you ask me. And then KRE, backing off the 50 MA, we talked about the 42 handle, had a pretty good sell today, down 1.8%. Really just kind of range bound right now. I don't see like a benefit to going long or short here. I think these kind of stay range bound here for the foreseeable future. Ultimately, will they go lower? Probably, as we have more consolidation and stuff like that. But right now, I just don't see really the risk reward. There's KBE hanging in there, basically the same chart. Broker dealers, a little bit of follow through to the downside again. So that 450 area acted as resistance. If you lose this moving average, it's definitely going to be a negative here, and then you'll have, we'll call it 435. So you kind of want to hold that. If you lose that, then this can go lower here. So just be aware of that. But broker dealers financials down today. All right, crude here, that actually held up, and that's shaping up a little better, right? So I've been talking about that 20 MA for a while. Like, you kind of got to get above that to kind of shape this chart up, and it did. So it's holding up. You had pretty good volume there too. And I know OPEC's like threatening everybody with basically threatening the shorts. I don't really pay attention to the news in that regard here. They talk a lot, so we just look at the charts here. But it backed off the 50 MA. It's hanging in there okay. This can still get to 76 right now, but that's really all I see at the moment. So again, you got a lot of supply in this area, and again, that trend line, that's going to be pretty good resistance here. So still kind of on the neutral side with crude, but it has held up a little bit better, so we'll respect that. XLE was actually green today, up just under 0.5%. I don't love the chart here. I think it's setting up for a move lower, but it was green today, so we'll respect it. Crude had a nice pop above the 20 MA, so that helped out these energy names. XOP up 66 cents. That's actually a little bit better here. I think that can get to 130 if it consolidates a little bit, but again, I still think these are all headed lower here for the most part. OIH stalling out at the 50 MA. Again, if it can consolidate, you can get through that and maybe back up to 280, but that's really all I see at the moment. Nat gas hanging in there okay, so nice bounce after the decline the last couple of days, and it held the 20 moving average, so you're back above yesterday's high. So you took out that little sell there, and above 240, this can trade back to 250. So if we get through that, then you can get back up to $3. So nat gas getting a nice bounce there, and that's set up okay. All right, dollar index here, so let's flip over. And there's Bitcoin, and Bitcoin took a pretty good dump here today too. But let's look at the dollar first. So just under that 104 area, we did take some profits today on our euro short. I still think this can go higher here, but you're kind of going into, let me clean this, there we go. We're kind of going into a little bit of resistance here, and I don't think we consolidated enough to really push higher. I could be wrong, but risk reward here, I would have preferred a little bit more of a flag to get through that. Either way, I think the dollar's bottomed here, and you look at the weekly, it's a pretty good W, and we got above that red bar. That's a failure, so this can go higher here. Ultimately, dollar index holding up well and getting a bid here today. So it will have some resistance at just above 104, but you get through that, it's 105 and then 106. So dollar index holding up a little bit better there. Gold, that did back off again, so down 0.75%. To me, it looks like daily chart bear flagging right now. So if you get through that level, and if you bear flag enough too, that 100 MA will become minor, and we can get down to 1900. So again, I've showed you that on the weekly. There's your down sloping trend line. But again, you still got that 20-week moving average, and that could still hold up. Remember, the weekly is more dominant than the daily, so bear that in mind. But if you get through this area, it probably wants 1900. So just be watching that on gold. Silver, on the other hand, much, much weaker, right? So couldn't hold 2350. And we broke yesterday's low. We're below the 20-week moving average. The 100 MA too, the thing I notice here is this is down sloping. I would like it a lot better as support if it was up sloping. So a little bit of weakness there. Overall, I still think it's probably wanting to go to 22 either way you look at it. But again, showing some weakness there. Gold holding up, I think, a little bit better because of the debt ceiling kind of fears, and silver more of an industrial kind of metal, has a less of that monetary metal aspect to it. But either way, it's backing off. We'll see what that does moving forward. I'm not touching it right now. Platinum here backing off as well. So broke through 1040. So that's a little bit of technical damage there. On the monthly, though, it's still fine. I still like this okay, and there's plenty of room here for consolidation on the monthly time frame for a bigger move. But in the near term, I don't really have any sort of trade on it at the moment. And then palladium also backing off as well. This is getting interesting to me. I kind of intrigued down here, to be completely honest. I know it doesn't look great on the weekly, but I really like this monthly level, and I think this is just accumulation here. But we'll see what it does over the next couple of weeks here. But palladium definitely has my eye. And then copper, definitely on the weaker side. So I said, look, don't buy 360, and we did knife through that, down 2.5%. So copper diverging pretty sharply here. Well, I shouldn't say from equities, because we were down the last couple of days in equities, but we've been diverging since February, actually January. But either way, we got into these pivots right here. I think it wants the low 340s. Got that green bar right there, as well as the 7.5 fib. So that's kind of where I think it wants to go. And then, of course, that little trend line right there as well. So that's where I would be looking for copper to go. Doesn't mean it won't bounce here in the short term, maybe retest 370, but ultimately it's definitely looking like it's on the weaker side. All right, over to Bitcoin here. So Bitcoin did back off. It came off the lows here. Again, we talked about the 20 MA kind of rejection here. We closed a little bit lower yesterday, and then we just broke yesterday's low and had a pretty good outside move. If we look on the smaller time frame, yeah, good dump there, and it's coming off the lows. It's almost like it's getting a sympathy bid here with NVDA, so still trading kind of like leveraged NASDAQ in a way, but again, unlike the NASDAQ, Bitcoin hasn't made a new high since April 14th. So lower highs here. If you take this low out, especially on a weekly close, I think that it's probably going to go down to that 23,900 right in that area. Maybe the 200 moving average on some overshoot here, but definitely on the weaker side that it's not kind of participating. I mean, you still are above the 20-week moving average, and this is still not a terrible pattern, but I think I would have liked to have seen it get going by now and not put in so much daily bearish consolidation here. So still kind of neutral on this at the moment, but daily definitely worse than the weekly. All right, let's get back over to the spiders here. Again, remember, into the weekend, it's going to be more about the weekly close for me. We've had a lot of fake outs, right? The last almost 2-3 months. Fake down, fake out, fake down, fake out. Could we get another fake down? It's possible. So we got to wait for that weekly close. Level I'm really watching, again, 410.23. So that's going to be the area. If we get below that on a weekly close, that opens the door for, to me, a move down to at least 400 there. So that's what I'd be watching moving forward. If the bulls can save it, then they can save it, and maybe we can go higher. Maybe some other company mentions AI a bunch of times, like NVIDIA. Let's take one last look there. Yeah, settling around 367, so that's holding up right now. We'll see where that opens tomorrow. Obviously, that will affect the semiconductors, and they're basically right at that top side trend line right now. That probably gets stuck there, at least until tomorrow. Anyways, guys, going to wrap up here. You guys take care. Come find me on carnivoretrades.com. Talk to you guys all tomorrow.